Marine's general asked her kill count as a joke. Her response left the entire Navy stunned and speechless. The room was cold. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering, casting pale streaks across the gray walls. Every chair, every table, every corner was sterile, impersonal, designed to remind those inside that they were not here to be comfortable. Staff Sergeant Bryn Solis sat alone at the metal table in the center, hands flat, back straight, eyes fixed on the point just beyond the general's shoulder. Silence pressed in on her from every direction. 23 senior officers, each in full dress uniform, stared down at her with unreadable expressions, some bored, some skeptical, some barely concealing thinly veiled contempt. Lieutenant General Merrick Caldwell leaned forward from his elevated bench. His silver hair glinted under the harsh lights. 3 rows of ribbons spanned his chest, each a testament to decades of command and battlefield experience. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, settled on Bryn with the weight of judgment. Then, with a slow, deliberate smile, he spoke. "Marine, your kill count, what is it?" The words landed like a hammer. The room froze. Pens stopped moving mid-note. A few officers shifted, unsure of whether to breathe. Whispers died in throats. Bryn didn't move. She didn't blink. Her jaw tightened just slightly, barely perceptible. The calm exterior remained unshaken, but beneath it, tension coiled like a spring. Fingers pressed flat against the table, knuckles whitening. Her breathing slowed, controlled, silent, calculated. She was a storm waiting to erupt. Caldwell stood, letting the room absorb the silence, his presence filling every inch of the courtroom. He stepped down from the bench, boots clicking against the polished floor. "Do you think this silence makes you mysterious, Marine?" he spat, voice low, dangerous, or just difficult. Bryn's eyes didn't waver. No flinch, no hint of fear. She was an unbroken line, steel and resolve. The officers exchanged glances. Some leaned back in their chairs, arms crossed, waiting. Others scribbled notes. The energy in the room thickened, oppressive, heavy with unspoken questions. 3 commendations, 2 formal reprimands, multiple deployments, yet almost no mission reports. "Explain that, Sergeant," Caldwell demanded, stepping closer, voice rising. "Explain it now." His words sliced through the air. The sound of his authority collided with the stillness Bryn maintained. Calm, precise, clinical. "I don't, sir." The room blinked. Officers coughed. One leaned forward, pen frozen midair. The audacity, the discipline. Caldwell's eyes narrowed. "You don't," he hissed, stepping even closer. "You don't? What? You're telling me you don't explain the gaps in your record in front of your peers?" Bryn's lips parted slightly, not in protest, but to repeat her unwavering answer. "No, sir." A low murmur spread across the room, not loud enough to disrupt the silence, but enough for those paying attention to hear. Disbelief, astonishment, tension. Caldwell's face hardened, his jaw set. He turned slightly to address the panel, his voice booming. "This Marine, she thinks her record is her shield. She sits here, silent, detached, unaccountable. She claims experience. She claims skill. Yet she will not speak. She refuses transparency. How can we judge someone who hides behind their own silence?" Bryn's eyes never left the midpoint just beyond his shoulder. She didn't blink. She didn't shift. Her posture was the very definition of discipline, controlled, focused. Every subtle micro-expression conveyed a message. She was aware. She knew. She was waiting. Caldwell stepped back, paced, gesturing broadly with hands that had delivered orders across countless battlefields. "You were deployed to the South China Sea, 2023, Forward reconnaissance. You claim to have participated in direct actions. Explain. Silence. Bryn's reply was flat, neutral. No, sir. Shock reverberated through the courtroom. Officers whispered to one another, eyes widened. Some stared openly, others darted glances around, unsure what to make of a Marine who defied interrogation so completely. Caldwell's voice rose, sharp and scowling. Do you know what I think, Solace? He stepped directly in front of her table, looming, predatory. I think you've been hiding behind classification, bureaucracy, silence. I think you think no one will ever ask what you actually did. A low gasp escaped from one of the officers. The tension snapped just enough for the room to react. But Bryn didn't react. She remained poised, unwavering like a statue. Her knuckles pressed harder. Her breath stayed measured, controlled, silent, calculated. She was a storm waiting to erupt. Caldwell slammed his hands against the table, now leaning over her, inches from her face. His words poured out in jagged, angry bursts. I've seen Marines like you, all mystique, no substance. One lucky assignment and they coast for years. One mistake, one lapse, and... He stopped, taking in the silence that followed. All eyes were on her, waiting. The predator faced its prey. But Bryn wasn't prey. She was a storm, and the calm before it made the officers uneasy. In the back row, Rear Admiral Idris Kale watched silently, his steel eyes fixed on Bryn. He had said nothing, made no movement. Yet now, as Caldwell raged, Kale shifted imperceptibly in his chair, opening a thin file, reading, studying. His expression tightened, hands gripping the armrest. He closed the folder deliberately, setting it down with a soft, ominous thud. His gaze locked on Bryn, and he did not look away. Caldwell, sensing a rising tide of uncomfort among the officers, straightened. Let's talk about your last deployment, Navy SEAL liaison, direct actions, correct? Bryn's reply remained calm, almost mechanical. Yes, sir. The room leaned in, every eye fixed. Caldwell smirked, trying to regain control. How many, he demanded, leaning in close, voice sharp, pointed. How many kills? Bryn's font lifted slowly. Her eyes met his. Her voice was calm, controlled, precise, almost clinical. 73. The room froze. Breath caught in throats. Pens fell from hands. Eyes widened. Caldwell blinked, lips parting. Shock flickered across his face. Officers whispered to one another, startled, unsure what to make of it. The silence stretched, heavy, oppressive. No one moved. No one spoke. Code name Phantom Trident, Bryn added, quietly, deliberately. 5 words that detonated the room. The tension snapped like wire. Rear Admiral Idris Kale arose abruptly, knocking his chair back. The folder tumbled, papers scattered like shrapnel across the floor. Stop the recording, he barked, voice cutting through the stunned silence. Cameras powered down, red lights blinking off one by one, plunging the room into darker stillness. Caldwell tried to speak, to regain control. This is... His voice faltered. He looked around, grasping for authority, for some foothold in the chaos that Bryn had created with 2 simple words and a number. I didn't... Kale cut him off, low and deadly. You didn't know. You didn't care. You tried to break her. Her record is inconsistent because you sanitized it. Her missions? Erased. Her actions? Classified beyond comprehension. You've spent your career protecting your ego while she protected lives you'll never understand. The room held its breath. Officers, once skeptical, sat rigid, stunned. Every micro-expression a revelation of the truth finally seeping in. Bryn remained seated, hands flat, calm, unbroken, a pillar amidst chaos. Her silence had been her armor, her discipline, her weapon. Caldwell, for the first time, was diminished. Authority evaporated. Confidence collapsed. The man who had demanded humiliation now sat reduced, watching the quiet Marine command attention, respect, fear, and awe, without a single shout, without a single aggressive word. Admiral Cale turned to Bryn. "You're dismissed. All charges dropped, effective immediately. You will be reassigned under my direct authority." Bryn rose, sharp, precise, crisp salute. Cale returned it. Others in the room, officers and admirals alike, stood not because protocol demanded it, but because respect demanded it. She turned toward the door, footsteps echoing against cold tiles, every step deliberate. Caldwell remained, pale, broken, staring at an empty chair. Silence reigned. The echoes of the confrontation lingered like smoke. Outside, the sunlight hit her face for the first time in hours. A new mission awaited, and the room, once filled with judgment, was left reeling in the wake of her revelation. The doors closed behind her, leaving the courtroom empty, yet the echoes of her words lingered, heavy and sharp. Staff Sergeant Bryn Solis walked down the corridor, boots tapping against the polished floor, each step precise, measured. Her eyes were calm, neutral, but inside a storm raged. Every officer who had doubted her, every skeptical glance, every whispered insult, they had no idea what she had carried silently. The weight of years, deployments erased, missions unacknowledged yet executed flawlessly. And now, the smallest hint of that weight began to leak. She entered a secured briefing room, dimly lit, screens flickering with encrypted data. The air smelled faintly of ozone and machine polish. Every sound felt amplified. The whir of a server, the distant hum of ventilation, the soft click of her boots. Around her, senior officers and intelligence analysts watched her like she was a living paradox, disciplined, quiet, yet dangerous in a way that didn't announce itself. They had expected arrogance. They had expected hesitation. What they did not expect was control. Bryn stopped at the center of the room. "All reports from South China Sea and Persian Gulf operations have been redacted," she said, voice calm, measured. Not a plea, not a justification, simply a statement. Eyes widened. Some officers exchanged glances. One analyst whispered something, but it died quickly in the tense space. She was not here to explain herself. She was here to act, to reveal only what needed to be revealed. Her first deployment had been 3 years prior, a mission so classified it barely existed on paper. Forward reconnaissance, naval intelligence liaison, close quarters strike specialist. Every movement, every calculation had been precise. No one outside a select circle knew. And now, little by little, fragments began to surface, not through boastfulness, but through subtle demonstration of her competence. She referenced encrypted coordinates, operational gaps, and procedural anomalies. Officers leaned forward. Some scribbled notes furiously, others simply stared. "You realize," one colonel muttered under his breath, almost to himself, "that she's been invisible, intentionally?" Bryn's eyes flicked toward him. No smile, no acknowledgement, only the calm that unnerved more than any display of force. That invisibility, that silence, purposeful, protecting national security, protecting lives while bureaucrats argued over insignias and paperwork. Then came the micro-twist. A senior JAG officer, arms folded, had spent weeks doubting her. He had whispered in corridors that her record was inconsistent, her accolades inflated, her deployment history exaggerated. Now he sat frozen, realizing the gravity of what he had dismissed. This was no ordinary Marine. Every calculated silence, every controlled motion, every measured word was a testament to skill, lethality, and restraint. Bryn's voice broke the quiet again. "There was an unsanctioned operation in international waters last year," she said, precise, deliberate. The officer stiffened. Her eyes met each of theirs, unwavering. She did not explain, did not elaborate, but the weight of the revelation filled the room. Whispers tried to form, but faltered. The room hung in balance, teetering between disbelief and realization. A map flickered on the main screen, showing a cluster of maritime zones marked in red. Coordinates, movement patterns, threat indicators.
Bryn spoke over them, voice calm but commanding. Recon patterns indicate coordinated attempts to disrupt multiple carrier strike groups. Timing and execution show pre-operational calibration. If a strike were planned, the window is narrow, 6 weeks. Eyes widened, fingers froze over tablets. Analysts whispered to neighbors, but Bryn's presence silenced them. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't shout. She simply stated facts, letting them resonate like calculated detonations. Every officer in the room felt the shift. The Marine they had underestimated was extraordinary, lethal, calm, unassailable. Caldwell had not yet joined this briefing, but the tension in the room hinted at him. Some officers whispered about what he would say, how he would try to dominate the narrative to reclaim the authority he had lost when she had spoken in the courtroom. But Bryn did not flinch. She did not prepare for him. She had prepared for the mission, the threat, the operation itself, and that was enough. Authority, ego, and skepticism mattered little when real danger was imminent. Her hands moved over encrypted schematics projected on the screens. She traced paths, identified vulnerabilities, and anticipated potential enemy maneuvers. The room absorbed every calculation, every suggestion, every warning. Analysts who had questioned her judgment now watched silently, compelled by competence, unable to argue against precision. Suddenly, a junior analyst spoke up, voice shaky. "Ma'am, the operation you just referenced, Phantom Trident?" Bryn's eyes flicked briefly toward him, calm, collected. "Confirmed." The word struck like a gunshot. Silence followed. Officers stiffened. The recognition of what she had accomplished hit in waves. Every unacknowledged deployment, every erased report, every destroyed medal and citation now formed a mosaic of lethal expertise.
A subtle shiver ran through the room. Some officers realized that their previous arrogance, their dismissal of her, had been misplaced. They had underestimated the quiet Marine who had operated in shadows, whose actions had saved lives that would never appear on paper. Some sat rigid, processing the fact that a woman they had judged as difficult and uncooperative had executed operations of unimaginable scale and danger. The tension escalated. Bryn leaned slightly over the table, pointing to a series of coordinates along a projected path. The enemy tested patrol responses, mapping coverage gaps. She said softly, measured. If a strike occurs, it will exploit those gaps. Timing is critical. Action must be preemptive. She did not raise her voice. She did not beg for attention. She demanded only comprehension. And comprehension came in the form of silent realization. One rear admiral, previously skeptical, whispered under his breath, "She did this? Alone?" A pause. All of it? Operationally unsanctioned? Bryn's jaw tightened ever so slightly. Not alone, supported by select operators. But yes, the mission was conducted without standard approval, unacknowledged by Department of Defense records, classified beyond official clearance. Lives were at stake, millions in potential consequences. Gasps passed like waves. Fingers tapped pens, trying to record fragments. Analysts leaned forward, notebooks open, eyes wide. The weight of her hidden service settled across the room like a storm cloud. Emotional tension spiraled. Awe, fear, respect, disbelief. Officers who had been condescending now understood her lethal precision. Those who had whispered insults now wondered how they had misjudged her. Bryn paused, letting the realization sink in. Every eye fixed on her, every breath caught. She did not smirk, did not boast. Her strength lay not in noise, but in silent command. Every operation, every calculated strike, every hidden sacrifice, she had carried alone, with discipline that defied understanding. And now, the first official hint was revealed. Not the entire mission, not the outcomes, but enough to shatter assumptions. Suddenly, a siren-like alarm from the system echoed faintly, unnoticed by most. Bryn's eyes narrowed. Threats were imminent. This was the same kind of pressure she had trained for, lived under, survived. Every emotion,
Anger, frustration, silent rage, careful anticipation flowed through her. Yet outwardly, her composure remained absolute. She was the calm at the center of a hurricane. Pre-operational reconnaissance shows repeated attempts to replicate the same tactics, she continued, pointing at highlighted coordinates. If not intercepted, the consequences mirror last year's operation. Timeframe, 6 weeks. The room swallowed the words, silent again. Each officer processed the implications. Panic was silent. Shock was silent. Only respect, forced and grudging, rippled through the ranks. A micro-twist followed. One senior captain, previously convinced of her incompetence, clenched his jaw and muttered, almost to himself, "She's not just skilled, she's lethal and underestimated." Bryn's gaze flicked to him briefly. He froze. She did not nod, did not acknowledge, but the subtle recognition was enough. The realization spread like wildfire. The Marine they had dismissed as difficult, insubordinate, invisible was extraordinary beyond comprehension. Then the screens flickered to operational feeds, encrypted patterns, coded communications, intercepted signals. Bryn traced enemy maneuvers, revealing vulnerabilities no one else had seen. Her hands moved with mechanical precision. Her voice remained calm, low, compelling. Analysts typed furiously, absorbing fragments, realizing the scale of her work. The mission, hidden, unrecognized, deadly, now partially revealed, changed everything. And yet, Bryn said nothing more. She did not explain, did not justify, did not boast. Every officer understood that what they were witnessing was only the tip of the iceberg. Her presence, her discipline, her invisible sacrifices had shaped operations far beyond their comprehension. Silence, control, lethal expertise, the combination was devastating. The room remained tense. No applause, no acknowledgement, only recognition quietly spreading. Officers who had scoffed now leaned forward, whispers replaced with attentive calculation. Every movement, every micro-expression of Bryn's conveyed a message far louder than words. Underestimate her, and it would cost lives. The micro-revelation of Phantom Trident had done its work. Skeptics were stunned. Analysts were riveted. Senior officers were forced to reevaluate everything they thought they knew about the Marine in front of them. The gravity of her unseen history, her lethal expertise, her underappreciated power, finally, partially revealed, hung in the air. The conference room was silent, deadly silent. Staff Sergeant Bryn Salas stood at the center, eyes scanning the dozen officers and analysts around her. Every pulse, every subtle intake of breath, every flicker of doubt, reverence, or fear was visible. She did not speak at first. She did not need to. The weight of what had already been hinted at, Phantom Trident, pre-operational reconnaissance, untold risk, hung thick in the air. And now the final layer would be peeled back. Rear Admiral Cale's steel eyes locked on hers. "Staff Sergeant," he said quietly. His voice carried authority, but also an unspoken warning. "This is beyond what anyone here can fully comprehend." Bryn nodded once, barely perceptible, calm, controlled. She moved to the screen, hand steady, tracing coordinates with the precision of a surgeon. August 2023, Spratly Islands, international waters. Threat, coordinated strike on 3 carrier strike groups. Gasps echoed, quiet but tense. Officers exchanged looks that conveyed disbelief and dawning understanding. Bryn's voice cut through the tension, unwavering. Threat was immediate, 48 hours to neutralize, 4,000 lives at risk. Conventional response, impossible. Diplomatic protocols, insufficient. She paused, letting the magnitude sink in. Every eye widened, every stomach tightened. Caldwell stood, fists clenched. You executed this? Alone? A pause. All of it? Operationally unsanctioned? Bryn's jaw tightened ever so slightly. Not alone, supported by select operators. But yes, the mission was conducted without standard approval, unacknowledged by Department of Defense records, classified beyond official clearance. Lives were at stake. millions in potential consequences. The room collectively inhaled. The weight of her words landed like a bomb. Analysts froze. Colonels leaned forward, unable to look away. JAG lawyers paled, realizing the scale of what had occurred in silence. Bryn's calm, measured voice continued. Boarded the command vessel at 300 hours. Hostile environment, tight quarters, heavily armed combatants. Duration, 72 minutes. My role, sole trigger operator, close quarters engagement. Outcome, mission successful. All threats neutralized.
Carrier strike groups intact. The silence that followed was not normal. It was a vacuum. No whispers, no movement. Officers who had questioned her expertise, her discipline, her composure, now sat paralyzed. Shock, awe, disbelief. Some gripped their chairs, others exhaled slowly, the air thick with tension and realization. 73 confirmed kills, Bryn said, voice clinical, deliberate. Each syllable detonated in the room. Every target essential to mission success. She paused. Every officer's gaze was fixed. Her calm, unflinching demeanor stood in stark contrast to the shattering of egos surrounding her. Caldwell's face drained of color. He sank slightly, as though the floor itself had swallowed his authority. Phantom Trident, she added softly, deliberately. The code name echoed in the room like a gunshot. Papers fell from laps, folders slid to the floor, pens toppled, cameras, still recording silently, blinked red, as if acknowledging the historic weight of what had just been spoken aloud for the first time. Rear Admiral Cale stepped forward. All reports were destroyed. Medals, citations, commendations erased. Records redacted. No one outside this room will know. Staff Sergeant Salas has carried this burden in absolute silence. The officers' jaws tightened, eyes widened further. Some sat rigid, realizing that the woman they had underestimated had performed feats beyond imagination, unrecognized and invisible to the world. Caldwell attempted to speak, but his words faltered. He stammered, arms dropping to his sides. His authority, once absolute, now seemed hollow. The weight of Bryn's revelation crushed the ego that had demanded her humiliation. Every taunt, every accusation, every attempt to undermine her now seemed pathetic, meaningless in comparison to the truth. Bryn's hands remained flat on the table. She exhaled slowly, deliberately, calm. She did not gloat. She did not flex her power. Silence itself was her statement. The room recognized it, even if they could not fully grasp the extent of her actions. Her quiet strength eclipsed every misjudgment, every doubt, every condescending whisper that had been leveled at her over the years. A junior analyst, pale-faced, muttered, "She saved thousands, and we never knew." The words were nearly inaudible, but they resonated across the room. Officers nodded silently, the gravity sinking in. Respect replaced doubt. Fear replaced arrogance. The shift was palpable, electric. Bryn's calm precision had rendered all skepticism irrelevant. Cale leaned slightly closer to her. "Effective immediately. You will be reassigned under my direct authority. Your expertise will guide strategic decisions. You will operate at the highest classified levels where your skill is essential. Do you understand?" Bryn's nod was subtle, precise, full of silent resolve. She did not speak unnecessarily. Actions and competence had always spoken for her. The micro-twist unfolded. Officers who had underestimated her began to acknowledge her silently. A colonel who had whispered insults earlier now straightened in his chair. A JAG lawyer, previously scoffing at her record, scribbled notes furiously, eyes wide. Even the analysts, quiet and focused, recognized that they were in the presence of an operator unlike any they had seen. Her actions had saved thousands, prevented catastrophe, and done so in absolute secrecy. Bryn rose, movement crisp,
deliberate. Every step carried authority, yet without arrogance. Officers instinctively stood, not because protocol demanded, but because respect demanded it. Caldwell remained seated, pale, trembling slightly. His authority, his control, his ego, all rendered irrelevant in the face of her silent mastery. She approached the exit. The room watched, entranced, stunned, silent. Cale followed, a rare look of admiration in his eyes. Bryn did not glance back at Caldwell. She did not need to. Her mission, her sacrifice, her brilliance had already spoken louder than any words or protocol could convey. As the doors closed behind her, the officers were left in stunned silence. Caldwell slumped further into his chair. A man who had once commanded the room, now diminished, confronted by the unassailable truth. Cale gathered his files, moving methodically, deliberate, leaving no trace of panic, only controlled authority. Outside, sunlight hit Bryn's face. She paused briefly, letting the brightness remind her of the world she protected silently. Her footsteps were steady, echoing with quiet certainty. The weight of untold missions, of erased reports, of invisible victories rested lightly on her shoulders. She carried it not for recognition, not for glory, but because it was her duty. Inside the now empty briefing room, officers sat rigid, processing what had just transpired. Whispers attempted to form, but each faltered in awe, in shock. They had witnessed a revelation so profound that skepticism, arrogance, and doubt were now replaced by understanding, respect, and an uneasy awareness of the full scale of hidden sacrifice. Bryn's calm, collected presence contrasted sharply with the chaos in their minds. The unflinching, disciplined Marine had not only survived scrutiny, but had obliterated assumptions, shattered egos, and delivered the truth in a way that left no room for argument. Her lethality, her precision, her silent power was undeniable. And yet, she did not linger. No fanfare, no speeches, no acknowledgement. She walked into the sunlight, into a world oblivious to the heroism she executed in silence. Behind her, the room remained frozen in the aftermath of revelation. She had emerged untouched by ego, fully respected by those who mattered, and utterly invisible to the rest of the world. The subtle, lingering suspense hung in the air. Every officer, analyst, and admiral present understood fully that they had just glimpsed the tip of an iceberg of lethal skill, unrecognized heroism, and disciplined mastery. Bryn Salas had not only performed the impossible, she had redefined what it meant to be extraordinary in silence.